Hello, bonsoir, and bienvenue to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me are Eric Devine and Philippe Bargil. We are back off our summer holidays, ready to dive into the cool waters of a new Ligue 1 season that begins on Friday evening, and we have a jam-packed show for you tonight. But before we begin, here's Eric with the latest headlines.
Thank you, Nathan. While we still await the start of the Ligue 1 season, French sides have already been quite busy, with 3 teams in European action this past week. Monaco opened their Champions League campaign in the third qualifying round, comfortably defeating Young Boys of Bern 3-1, a first competitive encounter for a team that saw an influx of young talent this summer. David Kurzawa opened the scoring before goals from new signing Guido Carrillo, and Chelsea loanee Mario Pasalic gave Leonardo Jardim's side a strong lead heading into next week's second leg. In the Europa League, both Bordeaux and Saint-Etienne recorded 3-0 victories in the first leg of their third qualifying round ties. Romain Amouma had a brace, Ismail Diomande added the third, as Les Verts pulled away from Romanian side Targu Mureș. Things were initially nervier in Bordeaux, where Cypriot runners-up AEK Larnaca were giving the hosts all they could handle in a chippy affair. Nicolas Maurice Bellet scored and earned a penalty late in the second half to make the difference, after Andre Biogo Poco had scored shortly after the interval. On Saturday, France's overseas showpiece, the Trophée des Champions, made its second stop in Montreal, and Paris Saint-Germain ran ragged over Lyon's side bereft of playmaker and reigning Ligue 1 Young Player of the Year Nabil Fekir. Serge Aurier and Edinson Cavani scored both goals in a span of 6 first-half minutes as the treble winners ran out 2-0 winners, Maxime Gonalon being sent off midway through the second half. Ligue 2 has also gotten underway this past weekend, with most teams shaking off the rust rather slowly, as only 8 goals have been scored in the 9 fixtures completed, with Nancy and Tours in action at the time of recording. Les Havre are provisional leaders, while Valenciennes and Créteil also notched victories, as sides vie to give their promotion hopes an early boost. Bottom side Nîmes drew at home to Evian, getting a vital point as they start with an 8-point penalty as a result of an attempted match-fixing scandal dating back to the 2013-14 season. That's all the news for now. Back to you, Nathan.
Thanks, Eric, and remember, for all your latest French football news, head over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com. Follow us on Twitter at GFN_France, and feel free to tweet the show at the GFFN show. The links are all in the description of the video. So, first topic this week, we had a sneak preview of the season ahead of this weekend as Paris Saint-Germain took on Lyon in Toronto for the Trophée des Champions. And for the third year in a row, PSG came out on top. Philippe, where was this one won and lost?
Well, first of all, what needs to be said about the form of both sides was before PSG had a really good preseason tour in the United States, and Lyon had a rather dreadful experience in London during the Emirates Cup. So basically, PSG were going into this game much more confident than Lyon, and they did not have anyone injured, as I recall. They had the great news of Angel Di Maria signing, while Lyon, on the other hand, had Clément Grenier, who injured himself at the Emirates. So PSG were obviously on higher spirits, and they did start the game, shall we say, with more enthusiasm, scoring 2 goals in the first 20 minutes. Then the rest of the first half was a bit. We were just wondering, was it going to be 3-0? Was it were Lyon going to get back into the game? And the red card just basically blew the whole thing off, as PSG were very happy to stay at 2-0. And I think Lyon saw some of the attitude problems that Hubert Fournier mentioned in the press conference just afterwards. That will have a massive impact. It's going to be really interesting to see how Lyon actually react from this defeat and moreover this pre-season, probably not shambles, but a rather challenging start to the season, even though the opening game hasn't been played yet.
Eric, how did you see this one? Was it Lyon never really getting started?
Well, I thought Lyon actually looked bright in the match's first 10 minutes before PSG had scored. They looked like they were really trying to take it to PSG and sort of shake off or brush off the cobwebs, if you will, after their performances in London at the Emirates Cup. Um, it's hard to take anything away from the way that Lyon played in this game, though. This is an unfamiliar system for them. They do not, play that 4-3-3 on a regular basis. Ideally, were they to have Nabil Fekir or Clément Grenier fit, they'd be playing the same 4-4-2 diamond that they've been playing last year. So this is an unfamiliar system. And I think that they were relying too much on the fullbacks of Bedimo and Jallet to get forward and drive the attack. Tolisso and Ferry were tucking very narrow, which really wasn't giving the midfield a whole lot, which meant the midfield really wasn't giving the forward three a whole lot of attack. Lacazette had a very poor game. He was sort of invisible. And yeah, it wasn't a great effort for Lyon, but it also shows, I think, why they need to bring another attacking midfielder in the transfer window, especially now with Grenier's injury. And the other thing I would mention for Lyon too is that I'm not really sure how Beauvais works into this team. He seems like he has a lot of effort, a lot of graft, the same kind of play that we saw from him at Guingamp, but I'm not really sure how his link-up play is going to fit into this system. He doesn't seem to have the same connection with Lacazette in particular that we saw from the likes of Clinton Nanji and Nabil Fekir last year. So regardless of how that shakes out, I'm not really sure, besides his obvious talent, how he fits into this team on a starting lineup. I would probably like to see him used off the bench going forward in the season. PSG, on the other hand, wow. What a difference Serge Aurier makes being fit and healthy at right back. Just an incredibly dynamic performance from the champions. We saw midfield and defense moving in this sort of symbiotic, amoeba-like shape. Players were constantly dropping back, the likes of Lucas Moura, Ibra were dropping back. We saw Matuidi being the furthest forward midfielder. We saw Verratti getting forward. And just playing with the real joie de vivre. And this is without Javier Pastore, again, who was probably one of their better players in the back end of last season. So if we can see this kind of performance on a consistent basis from PSG, the league's all but dusted. The improvement that Aurier makes in that team over the likes of Van der Veel and Marquinhos when he was used at right back is, unbelievable. This is the Aurier we had seen at Toulouse 2 seasons ago, rather than the often injured or / ineffective player of last season. So I think PSG really laid down a very strong marker. Lille's certainly going to be a test at the weekend, but looking very, very, very good for the champions.
Do you agree with that, Philip? Did PSG look superb in this one, didn't they?
Well, just to go back on Beauvais, I think you're right, Eric, in that it was more tactical because I reckon Guingamp played. Watched them a few times in the Ligue 1 Europa League last season. They seem to keep playing 4-4-2, and Beauvais seem to be playing as a winger, which he's not really accustomed to. And I really found it actually quite strange. Maybe Fournier didn't have the personnel to play the usual diamond shape 4-4-2, and Beauvais will probably be more expected to play up front with Lacazette or Fekir, or play. Being some kind of substitute or something, but I think we can expect really a bit more from that guy who looks like he's really going to do 100% to make his mark this season, because he knows he still has to prove it at a big club like Lyon. And regarding PSG, agree 100% with Aurier, and like I said, I think the confidence was there, and the players do want to probably not forget about last season, because it was quite a success. It was quite a successful season, but really to be more motivated from the off. That's basically the message. Their performance, sent on Saturday.
It was really emphatic, really, in the end for PSG, and it's a good marker for the start of the season. Okay, we move on to our second topic this week, and it's been a crazy summer so far for transfers across Europe. But in France, it's been a bit of an exodus. A lot of players have flown for different shores, many going for the new money available in the Premier League, and it's a worrying trend. Will it have any end in sight, Eric?
Aside from the top 6 or 7 clubs in France, I mean, not really. The wage difference is too big. I think a great example would be N'Golo Kante, who recently signed for Leicester. The money that he's going to be able to make there at Leicester in the Premier League is, going to dwarf whatever Colin can pay him. But having said that, I think that, especially with a lot of these younger players, I think that they need to realize that they could probably earn more in the long run were they to give themselves a chance to really develop and grow their game a little bit more in Liga. Obviously for players like an Andre Ayew, Dimitri Payet, Idrissa Gueye, they've probably reached the heights of their play, and based on their age and the experience and performance they've had in Liga, a move abroad makes sense. I mean, you look at these players being, 26, 27, 28 years old. It makes sense. Go get paid. You're probably only at the top of your game for the next 4 or 5 years. We all know that football careers can end at a moment's notice. So that makes sense for the players like that. But then we look at someone like Jordan Veretout, Kante, Jordan Ayew. It doesn't make sense. These are players who have impressed in flashes, but I really feel like they could do with more seasoning in Liga. Or maybe moving within the league to a team that is playing in Europe to get additional experience. I look at the likes of a Kante or a Veretout, and I don't see how they're getting on the pitch. Not only in the system that their new clubs play, but also based on the talent that's already there. And yeah, I mean they're wood for the future, but if you're going to end up riding 2 or 3 years on the bench, we have to look at there's cautionary tales already, like of Etienne Capoue and Benjamin Stambouli, who we now see, leaving the clubs that initially brought them to England. Players have to be very, very, very careful, and I don't see this trend really reversing. And it's somewhat disturbing to see a lot of these younger players who I think could be more exciting with more development. On the whole, though, the higher clubs in the league seem to be coping pretty well. Teams seem to be sort of consolidating. Look at the likes of PSG and Bordeaux, who have not been super active in the transfer window, more sort of shoring things up, or bringing in a handful of players, being more selective. We've seen Lyon and Saint-Etienne bringing in just a few players, but they're of a sort of a generally higher level. They're not prospects. They're more veteran players that they think can round out their squad for their European games. And we also have Monaco, of course, taking the Moneyball approach, as it were, now with the way that they can develop young players like Fabinho and Martial and Bernardo Silva. But I don't know. It's certainly disturbing, especially from the perspective of seeing these younger talents not develop as much as they could have. I mean, someone like Veretout, I think, is really the prime example. He's been an under-21 stalwart for France, but he needs to step up his game to the next level. And whether he's going to have the opportunity to do that in England, I really have serious doubts about whether that's the right move for a younger player like that wants to make themselves a fixture for Les Bleus.
What
do you think to this trend, Philip? Is it a little bit worrying?
Yeah, no, I agree with Eric on some players. So there's two sides of this. Taking the example of Capoue and Sissoko, because they were both playing for Toulouse and they were both really, really great players for Toulouse. Very, very established for 4 or 5 years, so they were very comfortable at Toulouse. And you see that Sissoko did take some time to adapt to England. And for example, he didn't take to English football like towards the way Cabaye did, and it really took him time to adjust. And Capoue was just I'm not really sure why Tottenham bought him, but he really wasn't given enough of a chance. But on the other hand, Tottenham are. I don't remember if it's a loan or selling. Basically, he's going to play for Watford this season. So maybe they don't. They were aiming a bit too high for Capoue. On the other hand, there are other players who just take to the Premier League just like that. I'm thinking about Adebayor, who really wasn't that much thought about at Monaco. He was basically the French equivalent of of a donkey up front with just a good header to his game. And when he started scoring all those goals for Arsenal, I mean, most people I know were like, really? I mean, that guy can really cut it in the Premiership. So I don't know. I think it depends a lot on the mentality of the players. But sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But I do agree. The players you mentioned, Ayew, Andre, that is, Payet, who hasn't really had that great a start for West Ham, but it's only July. They're more established than Vertu, Kanté, and Jordan, who had actually a bit of a row with Lorient in leaving there. So it really depends on on the mentality of the player, because I mean the Premiership is just so much more physical, and some French players like that a bit more. For instance, I'm thinking of a player like Balmont would absolutely love to play in the Premiership. He's just made for all this physical contact stuff, but some players won't be. So it's a gamble, like for any other transfer when you're moving countries.
Yeah, I mean the other side of the coin too. I mean, if you look at someone like Adebayor that come to a big club and be given the space to develop it. Again, the three players I've talked about as this not being a good idea, Vertu, Kanté, Jordan, Ayew, they're going to be immediately put into a very high-pressure situation. And I also don't think that sort of crucible-like environment is really the best place for these young players to go. If you're at an Arsenal, a United, a bigger club, that you can be given the time to develop in maybe a dead rubber in Europe or a League Cup game. There's not that luxury that you're at these smaller clubs. Every single match matters, whether you can scrape a draw, or what have you, to keep their heads above water. I mean, there's so much money involved in staying in the Premier League. The pressure, especially on these lower to mid-table clubs, is just really intense. And I think that also has a really large, potentially negative effect on the development of these players, not only on the field but also mentally.
Well, it's difficult to think. I mean, other than the young players, obviously, there's the worrying trend of players like Franck Taberneau went for peanuts to Swansea. I still can't believe Dimitri Payet's at West Ham. That's a player from a big club going to a mid-table. Hopefully, they're crossing their fingers they can make the Europa League next season. West Ham. Surely that's a worrying trend that players, a big player in France last season, arguably one of the best players in the league, has simply just moved on to a mid-table Premier League team.
Actually, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't be surprised, and to go slightly off topic, I wouldn't be surprised if West Ham were more towards the bottom of the table. But you get that all the time. I mean, what I really was disappointed in was another Swansea player was Gomes. Gomes is just can finish just like that, and
we might have lost
very big ones, but he I think he could have found a better club than Swansea, and I think a lot of players are just they're just at really top level French football clubs. Like Gomes was at Lyon, and they go to a mid-table one in England. It's been going on for years, and that unless there's a real talent, I just can't see that. I just can't see it, stopping. And today has really proved that because of Conte going to Leicester, I think it was, and it's just like Eric said, he's just I don't know, quadrupling his wages or something. I mean, something crazy. So I just can't see it ending, unfortunately.
It'll never end. And
well, I will say, particularly in Payet's case, I feel like, especially with the Olympic Stadium coming, that West Ham may have more ambitions than some of those other clubs like Sevilla or Leicester. I think that they really want to make a push to be consistently top half, challenging for European places. I mean, they've had a considerable outlay this summer, and with the revenue they'll be getting on match days when the new stadium comes into effect next year, I think the West Ham, and the attraction of playing in London too can't be undersold. I think the West Ham really can develop into a bigger club than a mid-table / lower table kind of struggler. So that may have been a selling point for Payet in that particular example as well.
Yeah, I can't see it happening, but if Villa sign any more Frenchmen, they'll turn into the French national side in a couple of years, I think. We'll move on from that now to a new section we'll be running during the transfer window. It's going to be called our Transfer Rumour Review. I have 3 names on my list linked with Liga and clubs, but rather than predict if their move will actually come off, I'll ask both of Philip and Eric whether they'll think that player will be a good fit with their new club. We originally had Raphael to Lyon, but that's been confirmed earlier this evening just before we went on air, so we've crossed that one out. But I will start off with one that probably will be signed in the next couple of days. Eric, what do you think to Angel Di Maria to Paris Saint-Germain?
Well, I have to have my doubts about this. I'm not really sure where he fits into this team. We saw how dynamic that midfield was with Verratti, Rabiot, and Matuidi, and the front line the same way. They seem to have this really beautiful symbiotic relationship with each other. And who do you drop out of that front three if you want to play him as a winger? Lucas, who spent an incredible amount of money on, Cavani, who spent an incredible amount of money even more on, or Ibrahimovic. I mean, there's no necessary place for him in this team, especially when Pastore is added back into the mix. There are also rumblings about signing William Carvalho from Sporting Lisbon. If this is a player that Blanc wants, and it's a show of faith from the ownership in Blanc's ability to operate in the transfer market, I can understand why it might happen in that regard. But I think on the pitch, I just really have my doubts. I think, like I said, with a healthy Aurier playing the right back, this is a pretty complete team. I might have some questions about left back with Maxwell getting a little bit older, but by and large, PSG have a really solid team, and I'm not sure tactically where Di Maria could really fit into this team and give them a solid improvement, especially given the mooted fee for him, which is looking to be about £40 million, or maybe even more at the moment.
And Flip, what about that signing, Angel Di Maria, PSG?
Depends. I don't think Di Maria has the tactical man. I do think, though, that, and I hope that Blanc brought him to replace Thiago Motta, who wants to leave. I mean, we know that, and I think that he would be a very good central midfielder in a 4-3-3, which is what PSG are playing, next to Matuidi and Verratti. I mean, how mouth-watering is that? It's just a superb trio. And honestly, I mean, you get swapping basically Thiago Motta for Angel Di Maria looks good on paper. I do think it's going to come off.
Yeah, it does look like the move's going to happen in the next couple of days. Just mentioning a tweet that's been sent in to us by Julie Bailey. New Moneyballs Aston Villa would get a mention. Sherwood has a track record of developing youth, completely ignoring the fact Sherwood was head of development at Spurs for 5 years, e.g. Kane, Bentaleb.
If he plays, I'm not even sure he will. Yeah.
So, sorry, you just jumped in there. Your microphone went out there, Philip. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
But to the tweet I've just talked about, I agree with Kane. Bentaleb, maybe not so much. I'm sure Eric has his opinions on how much Sherwood could do as well. We'll move on to our next point now. Valbuena to Lyon. Eric, what's your thoughts on that one?
This is a weird one. I can see him playing as a 10 with Fekir up top with Lacazette. Gourcuff had operated in that role last year with Fekir and Lacazette being the two strikers. But they're very different players, obviously, Gourcuff and Valbuena. Gourcuff is a more static presence with with Lacazette and Fekir being more dynamic and working off and around him. Valbuena is certainly a talent, but I think that his game is very similar in a lot of ways to Fekir's. He's not as much of a goal scorer, obviously, but They're both diminutive players who are decently strong on the ball, good at drawing fouls, good at dribbling, good free kick takers. And I'm not really sure how neatly he fits into all this at Lyon. I think that, were he willing at this stage in his career to be a bit of a veteran option off the bench, that would make a lot of sense. But Mathieu Valbuena is 31 years old. He's coming into what's probably going to be his last major international tournament with next summer's Euros. How he is approaching this proposed move really leaves me with a fair amount of concern. Whether he can fit neatly into what's already a well-established, relatively well-oiled machine, if you will, at Lyon, really gives me some concerns. We've known him to be, a little bit of, I don't want to say a head case, but a bit of a potential troublemaker, if you will, when things aren't quite going his way. Having kind of forced his way out of Marseille due to various reasons. Not playing time, obviously, but just a general unhappiness over his financial situation. He will be taking a wage cut if this goes through. So that's a mark in his favor. But I'd just be very wary about the way, his ego could potentially affect the changing room chemistry of a very young and tight-knit team.
Okay, and finally, we're going to go a little bit further on. Yoann Gourcuff to Saint-Etienne. It's probably the 5th club he's been linked to in the past week or so. Philip, what do you think to that one?
I just can't see it happening. From Gourcuff's perspective, from a career move. But if it does happen, I don't really think that Gourcuff would work in the 4-3-3, and especially now, Saint-Etienne have apparently, from what I've read, lost Gradel, so they really need a winger, and I really don't see Gourcuff for reasons that are extremely obvious with his Lyon past and from what Galtier, who's the Saint-Etienne manager, likes to play as a system. So I don't think that would work, unfortunately, for.
Right, we'll move on. Sorry, carry on, Eric.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the move either. If Gradel had stayed, I would have liked it. Again, we saw the way that Gourcuff, as a more static playmaker, can interact with faster, pacier winger-come strikers, of which Gradel is an excellent example. But he really needs dynamic attackers to be at his best. I'm not really sure if the likes of the strikers they have on offer, Nolan Roux, it's really their only established senior striker at this point. We have Maximin and Erdig both having moved on as well. Saint-Etienne definitely have some issues up top, and I wouldn't think that signing a playmaker would be their top priority at this point with Gradel moving on.
It's a difficult one to justify. I agree with that. Moving on with to our looking at the places in Europe this season, with 5 clubs fighting for the 3 positions last season, and with all the outgoings and incomings during the summer, it's likely to be a tight affair again. Paris Saint-Germain, Lyon, Monaco, Marseille and Saint-Etienne will all be in the conversation again this season. So other than the champions, who has the best chance of finishing in the top 3, Philip?
I would say I wouldn't put Marseille up there. I would say Monaco for second, and would be toss of a coin between Lyon and Bordeaux. I think Saint-Etienne have a lot on their plate until the end of August to get a striker, and Marseille are basically rebuilding, and Lyon I really have no idea what kind of scene it's going to be, because they really need to get all these doubts that the preseason brought to them, and just focus on winning games before the Champions League starts. Otherwise, it could be very, very complicated. They just lost Grenier for quite a while now, and the squad. Yeah, okay. I don't see the squad very much different, and to me, from last season, a lot of it was down to the surprise element of the youngsters actually doing really, really well. So I'm really having very serious doubts about Lyon having actually having a good season from what what we've seen so far. But then again, we haven't had the first game of the season, so it's all speculation at this point. So I would say, I would put Bordeaux, who look quite established. I'm a big fan of Willy Sagnol at third.
How do you see it lying, Eric?
Yeah, I think that Monaco has to be the prohibitive favorites for second. PSG, obviously the presumptive champion. They've lost Yannick Ferrer-Carrasco, a very influential player last year, and Ayman Abdennour still may go to Barcelona. But again, their transfer policy, bringing in these young players, there's a wealth of replacement options for Carrasco. We look at Stéphane El Shaarawy on loan from Milan, Adama Traoré signed from Lille. Thomas Lemar, I think, could be a useful option at times. They signed him from Caen. In letting Kondogbia go too, again, was a big issue. But that gives more playing time for Timothy Bakayoko, Fabinho could also use in defensive midfield. Monaco is really gearing up to build a squad top to bottom, and we're seeing the way that they can develop these young players. And they've got to be favorites for second. Third, I think, is going to be really, really interesting. I agree to some extent with Philip about Lyon being in trouble, but I also think they've done pretty well in the transfer window. Bringing in an attacking midfielder, and I'll feel okay. Another central defender would be nice also, but so far the players they brought in seem to do well in terms of addressing squad needs, both in terms of versatility and in terms of first-team players. Jallet has played as center back for PSG, for example, so he can slot over there where Raphael will play right back if the need arise. Jeremy Morel can play left back or center back. Darder from Malaga, I think, could do well to spell any of the three midfield players. So yeah, Lyon have done well. I would make them just slight favorites. I had been pretty high on Bordeaux going out of the end of last season. They seem to really take to that 4-3-1-2 that Sagnol had started to have operating, with Khazri behind two strikers, and with the prospect of Diabate coming back and Roland continuing to mature, and also Enzo Crivelli, the youngster, hopefully be given some more game time this season. Things were looking really exciting, but then the sale of Mariano to Sevilla, I'm really shaking my head at that. He was such an important player to get forward from the right back position for Bordeaux. He was really an integral part in a lot of their counterattacks. His pace and ability to get the ball in was really, really important. And for Bordeaux to let him go, I understand the financial pressures that French clubs are under, but they have Guibert, the youngster who played against Laronca in the Europa League midweek, and he did all right. But in terms of seeing Bordeaux, potentially challenged and be a dark horse for that third Champions League spot, I really think they may have let things go. If there was any way they could have held on to Mariano for another season, they could have returned to the Champions League. The other teams, Marseille, if everybody gets behind Bielsa and agrees with the way he does things, they could be in the mix as well. Saint-Etienne, I just mentioned their problems. They have Nolan Roux, who, yes, is a proven striker, but not exactly a proven goal scorer. And the way that Gradel ended the season, they did, Saint-Etienne did well to get money for him, but they're going to have to invest all or most of that back into a really top quality striker, someone who can be getting a dozen, 15, even 20 goals for Saint-Etienne this season. Again, they're defensively solid as ever. We will continue to see that. That's sort of the nature of that team under Galtier. But without that opportunistic striker, I think they could really be slipping down a few rungs. From going from having challenging for the Champions League right to almost the end of the season last year, to maybe being on the fringes of the Europa League discussion. Lille, I think could maybe surprise some people as well. They're going to have a full season of Sofiane Boufal, who had a great end of the season. Serhou Guirassy is a French youth international who looked really good at the Under-19 European Championship. So I think that Lille could surprise some people as well. Obviously losing Simon Kjær is a big loss, but There's a lot of young attacking talent in that team, the likes of which we haven't really seen before. Usually it was sort of a dour 4-3-3 midfield, but now that we're having a little bit more of a well-balanced squad. It's not so weighted heavily towards the defensive midfield side of things. I think Lille could surprise some people this season. If those young attackers really are given the opportunity. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'll give OL the slight edge for the third spot. It'll probably end up being some combination of Saint-Etienne, Bordeaux, and Marseille for fourth and fifth.
So Philip, do you eliminate Marseille from that? Can they not even put up a challenge this season?
No, say probably fifth, but I think the mass exodus will basically render the expectations quite low. But then again, Bielsa did excel in that position last season. So I don't think it'll be a terrible season for Marseille. But I doubt they'll make a push for the top three. So fifth sounds about right, yeah.
Right, okay, we'll move on to our next section again. It's that time for our special report, and Philip this week is going to talk to us about the opening weekend in Ligue 2.
Yeah, it's very exciting times in the French second tier for many reasons. So I'm particularly excited about the new season ahead because of it being Paris filled. So Paris FC and Red Star, so Paris FC, which is in the south of Paris, who split with PSG to form its own club, is now promoted to Ligue 2. And we also have Red Star, which is not exactly in Paris. It's in the northern suburb of Saint-Denis. Unfortunately, Red Star will not be playing their games in Paris or anywhere near Paris. It will be played at Beauvais, which is the closest ground they found, which was to their regulations. But let us enjoy that. Both sides are joining Créteil in the capital, so loads of games to see. We also have some quite big sides getting relegated from Ligue 1. Unfortunately, Lens got relegated, but they did not get demoted by the financial authorities to a lower division of the French pyramid. So lots to look forward to. The first match day saw Paris. So basically, all the three promoted sides did not win. Actually, very few sides actually won. Valenciennes won at Niort. Le Havre, so Le Havre beat Bourg-Péronnas, who also got promoted with Red Star and Paris FC. And Créteil won the Paris derby.
Oh, Philip. Oh, I think he's just dropped there. We'll have to cut that segment short quickly, and we'll carry on with the show as it is. We'll move on to our next talking point. Eric, me and yourself will carry on from there. After a huge kerfuffle over the summer, the LFP's decision to change the 2 up, 2 down has been reversed by the FFF. So it will stay the same, despite not too much of a protest initially by clubs in Liga. Did the FFF make a right decision in the end, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that the 3 up, 3 down makes a lot of sense. We've seen a lot of romance recently with the likes of a Guingamp or a Montpellier coming up and having a level of success in Ligue 1. And without that, they might not be given the opportunity. And it also allows teams that are, on a higher level historically to have more of an opportunity to bounce back. I mean, we look at I know Nantes haven't exactly been setting the world on fire, but they've, that third place gives them that much more of an opportunity with the relegations they've suffered in the recent past to come back up, to be given more of a chance to establish themselves within the league. And the same thing for Metz and Lens. I mean, these clubs are sort of some of the sleeping giants of French football, if you will. And, even though it allows that much more of an opportunity for a club to slip down, there's that much more of an opportunity for a club to come up. it's a really good opportunity, and I think it'll, and again, sometimes we get clubs like Arles Avignon that just really do poorly coming up, but I think by and large it allows for sort of a way for fans of these bigger clubs in particular not to lose hope, which keeps up national interest in the game. So I'd have to think that the 3-up, 3-down staying the way it is makes the most sense. Again, maybe some owners of clubs that are going to be on the fringes of Ligue 1, Ligue 2 might be upset at the prospect of losing the television money and the match day revenue, but there's still that much more hope for them to come back. 2-up, 2-down, I think would be really dangerous. It makes for almost a closed shop, and it would also dramatically increase the pressure in Ligue 2. So yeah, a good decision. I think it benefits all involved.
I think I have to agree with you, Eric. I mean, the 2-up, 2-down system is an issue that, yes, if you're a smaller budget club in Ligue 1, it gives you a better chance of staying up. But at the same time, if you are relegated anyway, then you've got the same issues as everyone else. I think keeping the 3-up, 3-down, which is seen in across Europe and in other leagues, it keeps the excitement of the league up. It will hopefully bring money into the country and into the clubs because of the intrigue of the league rather than simply because of the security. But that obviously can't be really guaranteed, but you want to keep that excitement and that hope that someone like Gazaleka Ajaccio, who came up last season went from the National to Ligue 2 and then went straight up again. If it was 2-up, 2-down, would that happen? Because of the teams coming down having so much more money if they stayed in Liga for a season or two. It begins to get convoluted, doesn't it, after a couple of seasons, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as dramatic a situation money-wise as it is in the Premier League because the TV deal's not as big. But yeah, I mean, we've seen, Mets were in the National a couple seasons ago as well and came back up. It's that dynamism, I think, can really give a lot of hope to clubs of quote-unquote smaller stature. And, I mean, that's what we need. We want to, get as many fans involved in having hope for their team as possible. We don't want it to be just the Lyons, the Marseilles, the PSGs that we're looking at is having a rooting interest in on a given basis. And again, these are going to be, by and large local fans. I don't, imagine that a club like Angers or Reims have, hundreds or thousands of fans abroad, but growing the game within France and making sold out stadiums around the country and giving some of the exciting atmosphere. I mean, Lyon are my favorite team, I'll admit that, but I have, an immense soft spot for Nantes. I mean, every time, there's a game at the Stade de Beaujoire, the tifos they have, the fan intensity, I mean, that's beautiful. That needs to be in Ligue 1. That needs to be on television. And, without maybe the 3-up, 3-down, it would not have been as easy as it had been for Nantes to get back up and reestablish themselves in Ligue 1.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And it's a massive catch-22, isn't it? And I think that at least for the time being, they've not rushed the decision like it seemed like at the end of last season, where it seemed like it came out of nowhere to a lot of people. So give themselves some time. At least the FFF have sort of changed it and thought it maybe was a little bit rushed. Let's discuss it over the season and then see how we can progress from there and go from there, I think, from now. Hopefully, we should have Philip rejoining us any second now. But we will carry on to the opening fixtures for the weekend. And there's a whole host of them this weekend, obviously, with some really leaping off the page. Eric, what should we be looking out for this weekend?
The match that I've kind of got circled on my calendar is Marseille-Caen. I'm really excited to see how Bielsa is going to set this team up. Again, they've lost a lot of their important players, but they also still have, a lot of players who I think have a lot of potential to really impress. I think Romain Alessandrini wasn't given nearly the amount of playing time he should have been given last season. Florian Thauvin has the opportunity to rejuvenate himself. Michy Batshuayi was very impressive in flashes. They have those 2 excellent attacking fullbacks into JJ and Mendy. This is a team that plays pedal to the metal style football, and they're going to be doing it against Caen, who play a similar brash attacking style. Maybe not as intense in the pressing as Marseille, but I think this game could be 3-2, 2-2, lots of goals. In terms of sheer excitement, I would circle this on the calendar as definitely the fixture to watch in Ligue 1 this season, just from a football perspective. Maybe not in terms of its overall importance to the season as a whole, though.
Yeah, I think the one I'm looking at the moment, looking at the fixture list, is I'm really excited to see Troyes Gazélec, 2 promoted sides, obviously. And I always like seeing the new promoted sides in any league going at the first game of the season, but 2 facing each other is a little bit of an oddity, actually. And I'm really interested to see how Troyes and Gazélec sort of adjust to higher division, even though they're playing each other. And I always look forward to seeing promoted sides. So Montpellier versus Angers will be really exciting as well. Montpellier are a good, well-established Ligue 1 side with terrific players. Sanson last season was excellent, and we're not really sure how they'll be this season with not too much transfer activity to go after. But I always look forward to seeing a new side in Ligue 1, and they'll be really looking forward to trying to topple Montpellier in that kind of game, and that should be really an exciting one. What do you think to the opener then, Eric? Lille Paris Saint-Germain. That should be an entertaining affair itself.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm really excited to see where Hervé Renard can take these younger players. Like I said, Girassi, Boufal, in particular, excite me. But we also have the youngster Benjamin Pavard, who impressed in flashes, playing at left back and center back for the under-19s and for Lille last year. There's a lot of young players coming up, and I'm excited to see how they move on from this Gaillet, Balmont, Mavuba troika that had been so much and their defense as well, obviously, that have been so important to their success in recent years. It's really going to be a new dawn for Lille. I got to make PSG favorites for the match, but hopefully we'll see some more exciting, inventive football from Lille. I mean, they were, especially in Europe, one of the more dour sides coming out of France last season. And I agree with you. Yeah, Angers and Troyes. I'm excited to see those teams play. I think that again, Ligue 2 is a much lower standard than Ligue 1, but they both, from everything I've read and the brief highlight packages I've seen, I have to confess I haven't watched the full match from either of them yet. But they seem to be trying to play football the right way. Good attack, good defense. And if they can maintain that level of dynamism coming into the top flight in France, I think we'll be looking at hopefully a league that's really changing its composition. And Ligue 1 has this reputation, deservedly, admittedly, of being sort of a dour and defensive league and overly physical. But if we can see a little more craft and guile from the likes of these newcomers and sort of a shift in aesthetics from the likes of Lille, I think Ligue 1 will be overall a much more attractive league to watch this year.
Yeah, and rounding up the other games, it's going to be interesting to see how Monaco do with the amount of changes they've done. And like you said about Marseille-Caen, Marseille could be either here or there at the moment, so that'll be a really entertaining one, and it's going to be a really good weekend of football. But we're going to finish this week's show. We usually have the heroes and villains, but we're going to change this week to do our predictions. Unfortunately, Philip won't be able to finish the show with us, so it will just be me and you who do some predictions, Eric. I just want a quick answer and a quick sentence on why you think that prediction. So, Eric, who do you think will win the league this season?
PSG. I mean, they showed the depth and fluidity that they didn't have at times last season. Yeah, they're gonna blow this league away. I mean, we could be looking at a potentially undefeated team if you really want to stretch it.
Wow, you really think undefeated? Is it you would go that far?
there just seems to be a lot more cohesion in attack, and the extra dimension that Aurier gives them is simply frightening. I mean, they were, playing Lyon for fools on Saturday. That it could have been 4 or 5-0 if they actually had tried in the second half. I was really, really impressed with them. That's probably one of their better performances. And again, it was without Pastore, who was arguably their best player in the second half of last season.
Well, that's always got to be food for thought, and I think I would go with Paris Saint-Germain as well. Don't think there's a team at the moment that reached anywhere near quite the quality in depth and even in the first team that Paris Saint-Germain. I'm pretty sure Philip will probably go along with that as well, gleefully. Who's your surprise candidate to do well? The team that comes out of maybe a little unheralded. Who do you think will do well?
As a surprise package, boy, that's a tough one. I want to say Rennes. I really think that they seem to have sorted things out a little bit in terms of the constant shuffling of players, and if they can have the sort of consolidation that they've really needed to have in Montagnier's time now, which they hadn't have in terms of the playing squad, I really think they could surprise people. They seem to be managing to hold on to Entep. Abdoulaye Doucouré, had a really nice season last year as well. Again, their defense isn't getting any younger, but they've got a lot of nice players there, and if they can find the right system there, Pedro Henrique, the Brazilian right-sided player, Camille Grosicki, there's a lot of potential there to, if that team can sort itself out, to really be, sort of in the same neighborhood where the likes of Bordeaux and Montpellier were, not really pushing for the Champions League to the wire, but certainly solidly in the discussion for the Europa League. So I think Rennes could really surprise people if Montagnier can get things down.
You stole my answer. I also think that Rennes will do well. I think they've got a lot of good players, Doucouré, and keeping Entep especially, who I think is a fantastic player. I think that's a really key point. But I'm going to jump on a point we mentioned earlier about Bordeaux. I think they'll do well as well. I'm not sure if they'll pip Lyon to third, but I would think fourth will even be a very good finish for Willy Sagnol's side. They've got some very strong players, good solid defence, good solid midfield with players like Sertic, who I'm a big fan of in that play. And they've really started to find the right players going forward as well. Wabi Kazri's starting to find form. Diego Roland was a revelation last season. Cheikh Diabaté coming back will be fantastic. And I think as well, Isak Kiese Tellin, which we didn't mention earlier, the Swedish international, was a little bit of an unsung hero in that Euro to under 21 win, and he caught a lot of people's eye. And he's never really quite done much in Liga so far, but he certainly showed the talent in that tournament, pulling away and making space for himself. And whilst not really finding the goals, I think that might come in the future with a bit more experience and a bit more game time. But he really impressed, and that kind of hit with Willy Sagnol, I think they've got the right kind of mix there to make some surprises, like both you and Philip surprised me by saying Bordeaux earlier.
Sorry, just to jump in quickly, the thing about Bordeaux is their defense had been so poor over the first half of the season. But the arrival of Clément Chantôme really tightened things up at the back. I think they had maybe the second or third best defense in Ligue 1 over the second half of the season. I think Monaco had a better one, but it was massively improved, is the bottom line. And that tightening up at the back really allowed that sort of opportunistic attack to blossom a little bit more. You had the likes of Contento and Mariano pouring forward, and Kazri being kind of a fulcrum of all that in an attacking sense. So yeah, I think provided that they can find a solution at right back, I agree with you 100% on Bordeaux. They're a very promising team now that defense is sorted out. Diabaté coming back, he had scored 8 or 9 goals, I believe, before he was injured. He's got every opportunity to repeat that success this season.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Chantôme was a really underrated signing. He's a very good midfielder that works in that kind of team. So who do you think will be relegated, Eric?
I would have to say Gazélec would probably be my first call. They don't have the sort of attacking dynamism that the other two promoted teams have. And also just the experience. They're probably my number one pick for relegation. The other two might come as a bit of a surprise, as they had done decently well last season. Nantes, I think the losses that they've suffered, I mean, so much of their attacking play went through Issa Sissoko. He's gone, I believe, to Genoa in Italy. Veritu's gone. Goals were a worry last season. And, without two of those key, Kian Hansen, the defender / midfielder they had is back to Midtjylland in Denmark. It's a lot of turnover for that squad, and they're still going to be lacking in goals. Just that there's a very razor-thin margin that Michel Djerzakarian operates on tactically in terms of, trying to eke out 1-1 draws or 1-0 wins. And I see that being a potential worry. I really like the signing of Stig Thorsen from Ajax, but I do have big questions over whether that could be enough from a Nantes team that really struggled to score for most of the season. Bastia, I think I'm a little bit worried about as well. They already had a sort of an aging squad, and a lot of the key players from last season, like Savant Ongenda, Alphonse Areola in goal, Gadi Talo, were on loan and are no longer with the team. So I think Bastia is another one that's going to struggle for goals. And, one can't understate, one can't overstate how important Alphonse Areola was for that team as well last season. And that's just a lot to overcome. I have to say Printemps did really well to get the most out of those players from the back end of last season to stave off relegation. Haven't been as low as last place at one point, but I think there's going to be more struggles to come for Bastia this season.
I think I certainly agree with you with Bastia. I think that's one of the teams I think will struggle. Financial issues obviously have been a problem as well off the pitch. And you also Riyad Boudebouz has gone to Montpellier, and whilst he's never really set the world alight, at the same time there's not that much real X factor quality at Bastia, and when you lose a little bit of it, it really sort of diminishes what you've got. I think it's going to be a real struggle for Gazalek, unfortunately. I'd love to see them give it a real go, but it's such a gap for them to bridge to meet any of the Liga sides, really. That has me worried, so I can't really see them staying up. And I'm trying to pick between two. I think Lorient might go down. They were pretty close last season. They've lost some goals, although erratic goals in Jordan Ayew, and I can't imagine Rafael Guerrero staying for much longer. If he lasts the summer, I can't see him staying until the winter. I think someone will come for him. And if they're already struggling, then they're going to be really struggling after January. They've never really found enough quality in this squad now. They've sold a lot of the players that were really pushing them forward. Ali Alideh a couple of years ago, and Vincent Aboubakar, who's gone to Porto, obviously gone to better things, but they never quite found the formula to replace them. And then I just can't see them quite having enough. I think someone like Nantes might just have enough. Guingamp might just have enough. And it'll be interesting to see how Troyes and Angers do, but I just fancy them to do maybe a little bit better than the ones that have sort of been coasting for the last couple of years. The final prediction for tonight, Eric, who's the winner of the Golden Boot this year?
I think if there's any indication from the way that PSG played against Lyon, I think Edinson Cavani. We looked at an Ibrahimovic that was willing to be more of a static, almost number 10 presence, dropping back and holding the ball up and laying it on for people. And I really think that if he continues to operate in that role rather than that of as more of a lead striker / target man, there's going to be a lot more opportunities for Cavani, provided he can strike the right chemistry with the Swede moving off the ball. He's a tremendous finisher, and he's not had the best of times so far at PSG, but I really think this can be his season to really start to shine and to, perhaps not get back up to the scoring rate that he was posting at Napoli, but to be much more of an involved presence. And I can see him easily coming up with 20 or 25 goals and leading the league. I don't see Ibra being as much of a scoring presence. And Lacazette, I love Lyon, but for him to repeat, he's going to have to go back to where he was 9 months ago, because where he was 3 or 4 months ago is not going to be good enough to be Ligue 1's scoring champion for a second successive season?
I think I'm going to come out of left field a little bit. I'm going to go for Anthony Martial. I think he had a good end to the season last season, and he's had a bit of speculation with Premier League clubs wanting to poach him. But with the creative talent around him of Shawari and Bernardo Silva, Jean Moutinho from deep, or from the other side, Fabiano from the from right back, or Cazorla at left back. Him being the focal point of that team now. Berbatov's gone, Germain is gone, and there's not really anyone challenging that forward role other than one of the Portuguese players they brought in the summer, Ivan Caballero, and possibly someone like that maybe might take over him, but hopefully I can imagine with Anthony Martial in the middle on his own, sort of nailing that position as his own. I really fancy him to grab quite a few this season. I think he's a really talented player, and it's a real good opportunity for him to show how good he really is, I think, this season.
Yeah, I mean, we forget, I mean, he's so young too. Yeah. That's a great shout. Especially in the last half of the season, we really saw him turn on, and he and Bernardo Silva, once they were fixtures in the starting lineup, really started racking up the goals. And that's a great shout, Nathan. I can really get behind that.
Yeah, I was mixing between him and Bernardo Silva for a moment where I wasn't quite sure which one I wanted to go for. Well, that's all we have for this week, and it's certain to be another exciting season in French football, and we'll hope you'll join us for the ride for the entire season. Thanks to Eric, and thanks to Philip, who unfortunately couldn't finish the show with us. We shall see you next week, same time, same place.
All right, cheers. Thank you.